All right, resume recording. All right, introducing Joanna. She is a DonorsChoose Ambassador. She's also worked with Furia Labs. So while this presentation is focused on DonorsChoose, she might mention some Furia Labs stuff, but none of this is specific to Furia Labs. So please take it and do with it what you want. She's also working in a high school in a CS position, a CSTA officer. The list goes on and on. If you're not following her on Twitter, make sure you do that. Anything else before I shut myself up?
No, you're good. That was a great intro.
All right. Put myself on mute.
Excellent. So welcome today. So the link up on the screen, and you should be able to access the slide deck from the calendar event that you linked up in. And Amber, if you could just post the link to the slide deck again in case people want to follow along in the deck themselves. That is going to be helpful for a couple of the activities today. But the link up there will, if you've never signed up for DonorsChoose before and you follow that link and you launch a live project for a Furia Labs product, I will put $10 towards your first project. So you'll get $5 from me for an ambassador code. And then as an ambassador, when somebody new follows that link, then they give me a little bit of a kickback, and I like to pass that along to participants in workshops. So what I want you to think about is, what's something you wish for in your classroom that you don't currently have? And if you're in the slide deck yourself, you can click on the sticky note, and we'd love to see what you come up with. And the sticky note did not work the way it was supposed to. What? Oh man, that's a bummer. The sticky note was supposed to bring you to a Jamboard, and I don't know why that's not working. All right, so just post in the chat what you wish for your classroom. We'll be flexible. I was going to try to use more digital tools, but that is not working the way I thought. So we'll give you like a minute to write down something you don't have in your classroom that maybe you can't purchase in your budget, or just something you wish you had along the way that you didn't budget for this year. It could be anything. Sky's the limit.
Joanna, it's not your fault. The website says the servers are under maintenance right now. So I'm seeing flexible seating, which is what I was going to put in there as well, or replacements for broken flexible seating. VR, AR classroom set. Dee Dee's just taking everybody else's ideas and writing them down because they all sound good. A Furia Explorer set. I like that one, Todd. Mark says more VR, Oculus Quest, 3D printer. Dee Dee says, I would love to revamp my classroom physical environment. So it sounds like more flexible seating and such, and a 3D printer.
Okay, those are awesome ideas. So I have launched, sorry, I've got a kid meltdown that decided to invade my living room. I have launched DonorsChoose projects for flexible seating, 3D printers, Furia Lab professional development, as well as CodeBots that I just got funded yesterday. And so all of those are certainly within the realm of possibility of things that you can finance through a DonorsChoose project. Oh, it's like not letting me click through and present mode the way it normally does. So today we just did our brainstorming piece about how we can bring our classroom to the next level and get something that you don't currently have. We're going to talk a little bit about how DonorsChoose works and how you can get materials for your classroom. You'll have some time to register for an account today and create. If we have time at the end, you'll be able to create or start creating and submit a classroom request to get those things that you need. And then I'll also talk to you about how I market my projects to try to get them funded as quickly as possible. So how DonorsChoose works is it's a crowdfunding website. So it is a nonprofit organization. They do, within your projects, add a small administrator fee onto the project in order to organize the shipping and pay their staff to catalog thank you notes and things of that nature. But I like to think of it as mini grants. So you're essentially writing a mini grant that has less strings attached to it than typical grant writing does. And so once you create an account, it's just pretty simple. You post a project. It can be anything from pencils to paper to coats to backpacks to snacks for your students, whatever your students or you need within the classroom. In order to post a project, you cannot be a principal, you cannot be a building administrator, a superintendent. So you need to be a K-12 educator in a public school or a public charter school. Private schools do not have the flexibility to use DonorsChoose, unfortunately. And they order everything for you. So it doesn't even involve extra work on the part of whoever normally does your purchase ordering and your ordering within your building. And then they ship things directly to your school. Or in remote learning, they have recently in the last week added a new project type, which is called distance learning, where if you know a student, let's say needed art supplies because they don't have those resources at home, you could put together a custom DonorsChoose for your student and have that shipped to their house. Or if there are materials you need to remote teach, like a document camera, you could have those materials shipped directly to your house. They would still belong to the school in the case of if you're ordering it for yourself. But in the case of the student, then they belong to that student. So they make it pretty easy. DonorsChoose is established by a former teacher in the New York City area, Charles Best, and he couldn't get the supplies he needed to educate and teach his students. They've been around for just over 10 years at this point, and I have been working with DonorsChoose for 5 years and have been an ambassador for 4. And so they are just built for educators to get those resources and those tools that educators may not be able to acquire in their classroom due to budget shortfalls. So this is a little bit, this data actually is old. I think I saw some data yesterday where this is well beyond where it is. I think this data is 2 years old, but just kind of gives you a sense of the number of projects funded, the number of teachers on the site. I'll move that bar so you guys can see that a little bit easier. And so it's not like it's a small thing. It's been growing over the years and more people have been getting on board to get the supplies and the resources that they need. So pretty basic. This is just a basic write-up of a DonorsChoose project. So you describe your students, your school setting, what may be those things that are holding you back. So if your school's a Title I school, or if you have high SES numbers, that would be where you talk about those issues. Under my students, I happen to work at a public charter school in New Hampshire, and we only receive about 1/3 of the funding of traditional public schools. So we are working with a much smaller operating budget. So you'll notice that that is like nice, bold, and purple. So the most important sentence when you're describing your students is the first sentence, the second paragraph, because that's going to be the one that jumps off the page. And you can describe whether or not you're in an urban or rural environment, how much technology you have in your school, the nature of your class makeup, the subject matter you teach, and all of that. And then my project is where you're really starting to talk about, these are the materials I need, and this is how they're going to change education in my classroom. And then you do get to go shopping, which is always fun. And I will tell you, getting DonorsChoose packages is like Christmas. My fellow staff members are like, you just got another box from Amazon, what the heck? And I'm like, DonorsChoose, haven't even touched, my budget money, or the budget's frozen. How are you still getting supplies? I'm leveraging DonorsChoose to get extra robots and pencils and whiteboards and flexible balance balls for my computer lab and all those extras that I need that are not covered in our regular supply budget. So it's pretty straightforward. After you follow that link on slide 1, it's going to ask you, to set up a teacher account. So there's a user agreement. You have to find your school. If no one in your school uses DonorsChoose, then we can contact DonorsChoose and get your school added to that list. Sometimes if it's a brand new school or if it's a public charter school, sometimes those aren't listed depending upon how long that school's been around. And then you're going to enter some teaching details about like the grades you've been teaching, the content area. Do you have any other additional roles in the building? Are you an instructional coach or an athletic coach? In those other pieces, enter some basic content information. And then you review your application. They give you a pretty brief step-by-step tutorial to walk you through. And so creating a new project is easy as hitting this plus button here to create a new project. And then they walk you through those, what age group is this for? How many students isn't going to impact this academic year? And I always go with the largest number possible. So if all students in the school have a chance of taking your class, even if it's an elective, then they all have the potential to be impacted by that project in the upcoming year, if you're planning a project that will be initiated for the next academic year. And then you describe your students, and then you get to go shopping. And so they have partnerships with Amazon Business, with book companies, with Scholastic. There's 2 or 3 companies that deal specifically with musical instruments. Best Buy is available as a vendor. And so if you're just starting out, there's this preset vendor list. If you've been on DonorsChoose a while, you start to accumulate something called points. And if you have 12 points, then you can do a special project and it doesn't matter who the vendor is. So I'm at the point where I have those extra points. And so it costs a little bit more for me to launch a project, but I can get a quote from any place and then I can launch a project for that amount. But because it's not a typical vendor that they deal with, there are some extra steps involved in that piece. You could do a class trip or fees in order to bring people within your classroom as well as a classroom project type. And then if you are looking for things like code bots and jumpstart kits, well, those are available on Amazon Business, and Amber has worked really hard to make sure that those are available so that teachers can leverage DonorsChoose in order to gain that equipment. And then another pro tip, if you're launching your first project, try to keep that project total under $600. It's going to fund quicker, and you're going to have an easier time the first time you're kind of figuring out that social media piece to get people to see your project visibility. So there is going to be a smidge of work on your part besides just launching the project to share that project with families within your school community. If your school has a newsletter that goes out weekly or monthly, trying to get your administrator to add your DonorsChoose project to that. I email some parents directly. If your school has a Facebook page, that can be a great place to thank donors or to post your project. In particular, if you have fund matching, and we'll talk more about fund matching in a little bit. Or if you have a Twitter account or a LinkedIn account, those can be other locations where you can reach a greater base. And there's some tricks with those social media platforms as well. So when you're describing your materials and how they make a difference, I often, if I was going for flexible seating, I would talk about the nature of my students and how, maybe we have longer class blocks and it's really hard for them to sit and focus. And so by having flexible seating choice, it helps them within that process to be more comfortable while they're learning. And we all know as adults, while we're more comfortable, we're going to be more apt to kind of pay attention and follow along and be focused on our learning process rather than being worried about how hard or uncomfortable this chair that we're sitting in. If you are looking at 3D printing, I would talk about real life skills and additive manufacturing and how that's been, especially during COVID-19, such a huge game changer. If you're out reading the news and people are making parts for ventilators as they break, or making face masks or the extenders for the face masks on 3D printers, and how we can teach students to be innovators even within a crisis and have that material available to them. So what happens next? You've written your project, you've picked your items, and then your stuff magically goes off to DonorsChoose. They have a set of teacher volunteers that they have picked, so it's an experienced other teachers just like yourself who have done a bunch of DonorsChoose projects, and they're kind of like, they totally know how to write a project. We're going to have them be project reviewers. So depending upon the time of year, can depend upon how long it takes for your project to officially be posted. But while it's under review, they have what's called pre-funding. So you can send your project out to family and friends, and people can make donations while your project is under review. Sometimes they'll send something back. It could be, you know, a spelling mistake you missed, or maybe you didn't go into enough detail. Once you sort of figure out the DonorsChoose formula, though, it's pretty quick to write a project. I can usually write them in like 45 minutes or less. Amber was with me with another teacher the other day, and I'd say we probably wrote her project in 45 minutes and got her on DonorsChoose started, and she had never done it before. So if you can sit down with an ambassador who can walk you through, it goes a little bit quicker. And then the first time ever you launch a DonorsChoose project, you get a liftoff code. And so the liftoff code will double any donation up to $50 dollar for dollar. And so that's usually the first 7 days of your project. So those first 7 days are going to be key to post on social media, email family and friends and say, if you can donate $1, that becomes $2. And if I can get, if you had a project for $600 and you get 300 people to donate $1, your project's going to be funded relatively quickly. So a lot of times they'll have fund matching. Only the first time you run a project, though, do you get the liftoff code. And then after that, depending upon who's matching funds, will depend upon what some other requirements are. But I can talk you through some examples of that. One trick is comparison shop between the vendors and the vendor store. So if you're looking for a particular kind of book series and they have it on Scholastic, they may also have it on Amazon, but it might be cheaper on Amazon. So it might be easier for you to spend a little extra time shopping to find that best price point. And then use any fund matching opportunities to your advantage. So kind of knowing when some of those fund matching opportunities come out is key. And so what I will tell you is usually around Teacher Appreciation Week, there's fund matching. Unfortunately, they announced that after we scheduled this workshop, and so that match was yesterday. And then they usually right around the start of school do fund matching. And then the other day that massive fund matching occurs, typically, although not guaranteed, is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving on Giving Tuesday. So those can be great times to have a live project up and running. Also, at the end of the year, there are people out there who maybe have some excess money, unlike those of us who are teachers, who are looking to make some larger donations to things in order to reduce their taxes on the other end. So once your project is funded, you'll get an email and it'll say, are you sure you still need these materials? I can't imagine a teacher who would say no at that point once you've gone through all that work. But you just verify that you really need those materials, and then they will ship them to your school. Now, if you're in a weird COVID situation, they may say, your school's currently closed, we'll resume shipping like out this far, at which point you would have to wait until whatever that further date is. So if you're going to launch a project today, and you're looking to get classroom materials maybe that you need to interact with or curriculum materials, my recommendation is that you're going to launch a distance learning project so you can have it shipped to your house. Otherwise, it's going to go to your school, and if you don't have access to your school, that's going to make things kind of challenging. And then once you actually get those products back, you need to write an impact letter saying how those are going to impact or are impacting your classroom and your instruction. And then your students need to write thank you notes, which might get a little tricky in virtual learning to get kids to turn those pieces in particular where we're about to enter some summer months. But if they set your due date for the thank you notes at a certain time, you can kind of extend that out. And we can talk more about that later. So success at the school I work at, these numbers do not include the $2,000 that were funded yesterday by my school, but we have 21 teachers in our building who have launched DonorsChoose projects of a staff of primary teachers of 35. We actually had 3 live projects yesterday, but one was in pre-funding and that one got fully funded yesterday. We have over 300 supporters, and our school is relatively small. We only have 368 students, so to have almost a 1-to-1 supporter ratio is pretty huge. And in the time that they've been using DonorsChoose, which is 5 years, they have raised $63,000 worth of equipment. It's actually 65 now. because we funded $2,000 yesterday. And so I like to equate that to people I talk to if that's a teacher's salary. So if a school is, resistant to utilizing DonorsChoose, it might be worth reaching out to DonorsChoose and saying, hey, my administrators are so anti-DonorsChoose. Is there anything you can do? Can you call them? Can you talk to them? And they'll try to reach out to that administration and send them some information on how it really works and the administrative reporting on the school's end that they can take a look at. I find that any administrators who are resistant to DonorsChoose, it's more of they're concerned about how many projects are live at a time and what that looks like to the community and kind of an image piece. But once they get educated about what DonorsChoose is and the power that it can have and how it can maximize and almost double their funds, maybe that a PTSA group has to donate, most of them come over to the other side and get on board.
Joanna, we had a question about that.
Oh, sure.
And I assured them that you would cover that. But since you've helped other teachers address that, districts that don't really like DonorsChoose or they want to control the flow of money, are there any tips that you could give to helping teachers overcome that barrier?
There is a whole documentation page for administrators and printouts that you can print out that give that information. It doesn't control the flow of money from the school. The school doesn't have to do anything. It's actually going to save them time. I know in my school, we just kind of have an unwritten rule of, unless it's the first week of school, we don't really have more than 3 projects up at a time. And we always try to have something up, or somebody tries to have something up. It can be hard if you're continuously tapping the same interest pool of people to continue to maintain that over time. Where I'm in a charter school and it's a school of choice, I think we have a little bit of an easier time than more of a traditional K-12 school, because some of the people who are coming to us are people who are looking for more of a private school model of education, but maybe can't quite afford that price point. So they're kind of in a middle ground versus in some other locations where funding can be a little bit trickier. I've done workshops with administrators in the house. They've asked some difficult questions. At the end of the day, the products belong to the school. They stay in the teacher's classroom until the teacher moves buildings or moves to another district. And so it's really just going to enhance that school community and what students have available to them. And, I've heard some crazy stories in our DonorsChoose Ambassador group that people have to submit that they want to launch a project, and then they have to wait 3 or 4 months to get approval from administration. That certainly could be a hindrance if that's the route that your administration wants to go. And if that's the situation you're in, I would say plan ahead. Because that fund matching is going to come up. And so submit a couple of project ideas and be honest with them and say, I want to wait until there's matching funds for this so that it doesn't take as long to fund and so that we don't have to ask the community for as much. But if I was to ask the PTSA or the PTSG or the district for this money, it's going to cost us this much, versus if we can fund it off DonorsChoose and there's a match, it's only going to cost half as much. And so I think you can kind of leverage it that way with a little bit. And it may depend upon, what the fundraising structure is of some different places. I know a teacher we were working with the other day, she said her school has funds where you can apply for as an educator. And so they didn't want teachers to go to another place because they've already fundraised and have this larger account. So I think it ends up being a balancing act. But what I can tell you is that the numbers kind of speak for themselves. And certainly we could potentially talk about me doing a presentation with your administration if you think that they would be open to that, and talking to them about the benefits and how it works, or having somebody from DonorsChoose headquarters reach out. I know that's what we did for the teacher who launched a project the other day.
Thanks, Joanna. There's one more question.
She literally got funded in 12 hours. So
yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
The other question is about the impact letters from students. If they're doing a PD project like Pathfinders, do you still do that, or is it just a thank you note from you? How do you handle that?
So for Pathfinders, they didn't ask for a student impact, like a student thank you. And there are times that there is no student thank you. It will depend upon who donates to your project. So they can check a little box saying that they want thank you notes. And usually what happens is for every person who donates, DonorsChoose asks for 5 thank yous. And sometimes it has to be addressed directly to that person or dear donor, and DonorsChoose will send you directions. If it's for something like Pathfinders, I didn't have to do that for Winter Pathfinders. All I had to do was 5 photos. So I just did photos of me being goofy at PD or like pictures of my microbit, like flashing, things like that. And then I just had to write a letter about how going to that professional development in Providence impacted my teaching. And so I talked about how it was such an amazing experience, and I walked right into the classroom the next day, handed the kids the hardware, and it was like we were good to go. And I've done DonorsChoose for Pathfinders at least twice now, and I didn't have to do impact student thank you notes for either of those. For other things, I have had to, and sometimes the timing gets a little weird, so I've had to push off my thank you notes a couple of times. But it literally can be as simple as like draw a picture, or you have a set of thank you cards in your classroom and you just say to the kids, all right, so I want you to talk about how you're using this in the class and how you like it. And consider that, you know, these people donated X amount of money to our school. Some of them are your parents' friends or parents of other kids within our school community. So we really want to thank them for that contribution because it's not something that they have to do. And then I personally remind them about everything in my classroom that comes from DonorsChoose. I wouldn't be able to teach computer science the way that I do or digital literacy without those items. But I don't think I've ever had to send more than like 15 thank you notes. It's pretty low bar as far as that goes. Any other questions?
None from the chat, but if anybody else has a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
For the learning distance, I know it goes to the house, to the teacher until we go back to the classroom, but
Yep.
is that, how long does it take? Like, is it like regular shipping, like 2 weeks or?
It varies depending upon the vendor that you're ordering from. So some things are going to be, just because of the nature of the supply chain right now, may take a little longer. So if it's being ordered from Amazon and it's considered non-essential, it might take a little bit. I know for the bots that I just got funded, if I said that I wanted them shipped to, I didn't do that as distant learning, which was a mistake, but if I have them shipped to school, they were going to be shipped like next week. But it's also because that order just goes to Amber and Jerry, and then they have those bots in-house. So I think it depends upon what items you're looking for and where they're coming from. There's been times that like stuff is coming from China because I'm ordering electrical equipment and it takes a little bit longer. But what usually happens is if it's coming from Amazon, you'll get like an email notification that the item has shipped and you can kind of track it that way. Does that
Joanna,
help?
we had a question.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Mark, did that answer your question? Yes, he says. Okay.
Okay.
And Joanna, you might cover this. I think you cover this later, but can you talk about what happens if you change schools, either within the district or if you leave the district? What happens to the things that you've purchased?
So technically, for all intents and purposes, those belong to your school, and it's at your administration's discretion on what happens to them after you leave. You could request that you take them with you if it's not going to be something that the school is going to use. DonorsChoose has a form letter on their website that you can access. If you like search that on their page, there's like frequently asked questions list. It comes right up as one of the frequently asked questions. So there's a form you'd have to have that administrator sign off on to go to the other school. So it does get to be a sticky wicket, and I'm fully aware about the stickiness of that. So I know in our school, as people have left, if it's a technology item, it comes to me because I'm the technology department chair, and then we decide which teacher is going to use that best and pass it off to somebody else in the building. While you're in the same school building, it's supposed to stay with you, but I have heard stories about some administrators being like, oh, I'm going to reallocate those Chromebooks that you got from DonorsChoose. So at that point, it's really kind of up to the administrators once it gets into the building. But that would be the case with any grant item that you'd procure in the name of a school, because that school name is attached to that project. Does that help? So if you know you're switching schools, you might want to wait until like late August and change your school name.
I'm going to put that link to that FAQ in the chat for everybody.
Oh, perfect. So I personally have launched and funded over 20 projects and have had 90 supporters over the last 5 years. And like I said, I've funded everything from flexible seating to Raspberry Pis in the classroom to, I just got logged out of my accounts. That was weird. There we go. To professional development, Pathfinders, robotics equipment, microcontrollers, stuff for e-textiles. I've had a 3D printer. That was harder to fund just because the price point was so high. But I did know that we have a nice benefactor at my school who pretty much has said if I need something big and I launch it on DonorsChoose and it looks like it's not going to fund, she'll finish it for me. So that's why that one worked for me. But if you're going for a high-end 3D printer, I would say that's going to be a challenge within that project time frame because you do have a time limit by which to fund those items. So we talked about signups and we talked about the gift code. So launching your first project. So in the slide deck, I've linked a project planning guide that DonorsChoose has given us to share. So just make sure you make a copy if you access it. But it kind of walks you through thinking about what are the things you want for your classroom, and then doing that initial statement of telling them more about your students. So, you know, thinking about those socioeconomic factors or those things that are going to make people really want to donate to your project. And how it pertains to those specific students, and then talking about how that project or the product is going to make a difference in student learning outcomes and what they're learning or their comfort within the classroom and creating a conducive learning environment. And so this template, some people like need a hard copy to write on before they get typing. So this can be a helpful starter for people. So that's available to you in the slide deck. And then that really is the bulk of just the kind of getting started. I can walk you through doing like an initial project and show you guys what that looks like, or if you want to work on your project and like we can talk somebody else through their first project if they have an idea and if they're okay setting up that initial account, we can do that in the time that we have remaining.
Thanks, Joanna. I just put another link in the chat. This is for the Furia Labs DonorsChoose Guide page. It's just some suggestions. I know sometimes it can be hard to get started. What should the wording be? What should the title be, etc. But it's definitely helpful if you type everything out or handwrite it out first before you actually go and start to create your project. So that way, even if you get logged out or the internet goes down, you don't want to lose everything that you've already typed. So that planning guide, I would definitely recommend you start there.
And I can put the link to the project that I just had funded for the bots in the chat. And then I also have one that I did for Pathfinders. If people are still thinking about applying to Pathfinders, I have the one for Winter Pathfinders that I did.
Joanna, will you share with them what you told Aaron about thanking individual donors on social media and such.
Oh gosh, I can't believe I forgot that. Okay. So, as soon as I get that email that says, congratulations, the Bell family has donated to your project. There's a piece on DonorsChoose where you think, you know what, I'm going to go back to screen share because I can just pull up my project from yesterday. So this is my project that I just finished funding in 24 hours for 2 code bots. And so after my project details and what I ordered, and that's really small, so let me make that bigger. There you'll see like there's a donor from New Hampshire gave anonymously. That was actually me. I was sitting on a gift card. And then Sonic doubled that match. So there was some match doubling yesterday. But as soon as I got the email from James, I thanked James here. I jumped on Twitter and I thanked him there publicly and tagged our school. And then I manage the school's Facebook page, so it makes this piece a little bit easier for me. But then I thanked him publicly on our school's Facebook page as well. So what that does is if he follows our school, it gets another public thank you out there, and parents really like that. And then it also, I link up the project again, so it gets the project out there. And then in the case of fund matching, I will find out what the Facebook and the Twitter hashtag is for that company, and I add them right in there. So then that company knows that I'm thankful as well for that match, and I have people donating. So then they're going to be more apt to donate again to DonorsChoose and contribute to those projects. And so what I find is if I do that, then it kind of spiral effects, because then the Bell family is like, oh my gosh, I saw my name and lights on Facebook and in Twitter. And then somebody else is like, I want my name and lights on Facebook and Twitter. And so then they donate. Even if they only donate $1, I thank them all the same amount. So they get it here on DonorsChoose and on both the school social media outlets. And then if they request the handwritten note, then they get that from students as well. I will tell you that I rode social media all day yesterday because there was fun matching for my project, the art teachers project, and the drama teachers project. And by doing that, although it was a little tricky while also teaching classes, we funded $2,000 worth of projects in 24 hours. Where else are you going to be able to magically pull $2,000 out of the air for your classroom or for your school? Besides doing something like this. I mean, in my 20 years teaching, that's unheard of to be able to do that. I have funded a class set of Chromebooks in 24 hours by having a project online at the right time when there was fun matching. And then there are fun matches going on all the time, but when you're on the main page in DonorsChoose, after you kind of create your account, there's going to be this thing on your menu bar called match offers. So before you launch a project, you want to check out match offers because you may change your project idea depending upon what's out there. So if you're thinking about Pathfinders this summer, it's a 3 times match offer. So if you read Pathfinder's website, I think it basically comes down to you only need to fundraise $100. And then if you end up doing the pathway through Feria Labs, you're getting, Amber, what is it, like 600? It's more than $600 worth of equipment.
Yeah,
and training.
The Jumpstart kit is $500. The CodeBot is $150, and then 2 teachers' manuals and a week of PD.
So these just happen to be the projects for New Hampshire right now. Like if you need middle school sports equipment, maybe you need to send home like, I don't know, yoga mats so kids can do yoga virtually from home. You could potentially launch something related to that and have match funding. And then Dick's Sporting Goods is also doing match funding for sports equipment. So you could get crazy fun matches. So right now, there's not a ton out there for New Hampshire, but you can, who lives somewhere, somebody said Massachusetts, right? I bet they have better fun matching because they have more industry. So usually if you have more industry, there's better matches. Nope, they have the same as New Hampshire. So sorry, Massachusetts.
Jake was asking about how the matching works with Liftoff plus the Pathfinders 3 times matching.
So because I think it's probably going to end up being that it's just going to do the Pathfinders 3 times match. because that's the better match for you.
I thought they did stack some though, but probably, is it because Pathfinders doesn't?
I don't know. It depends. The stacking of matches gets tricky.
It just
Like,
depends on the donor.
Liftoff can't be combined with an ambassador gift code or any gift code. So like, I know if somebody is relying on Liftoff and if it takes them longer than 7 days, then I can't even give them the money that I said I would give, because then their project isn't live anymore. So there are some things that get a little funky in those initial couple of days. But I'm pretty sure once your project goes live, so after the initial 7, then it's the triple match. But that one is, I think there might be a limited pool of money on that one. But in the past, Infosys has jumped in and like at the last minute funded the rest that were live. I've seen that happen. So right now they're saying, because it's going virtual, the cost is reduced. And if you have any questions about that, to contact Infosys directly. It's a 3 times match, so 20 becomes 60. Oh, it does say, please note, matching offer will not appear during family and friends pre-funding. So I wouldn't even post it until after the first 7 days, because that match is not going to be as good as when you post after.
But like the Sonic 2 times match yesterday did stack with the Pathfinders 3 times match.
No, I think it did.
I think it did. And Jake is saying that for Winter Pathfinders, he got 6 times for a bit. So it probably
Holy cow.
Yeah, it just depends on that. Will you?
It depends upon how that fund matcher is
Yes.
applying their funds and what their rules are, because they set. I happen to know the person who handles that at first. So they set their rules, and then they go from there.
Will you go back and check Tennessee?
My computer's a little laggy.
And then while we're looking, Karen was the one that had asked for Tennessee, and she's wondering how you market with LinkedIn. I think that's a little bit different of an audience than like Facebook or Twitter.
Oh, like if I'm posting to LinkedIn?
Yeah. Do you like tag industry?
So I would. I don't post to LinkedIn as much, to be honest, because I can only handle so many media outlets at a time. I am on LinkedIn, but I would look up that industry. So like, I don't know if Sonic is on LinkedIn, but if I was getting more of a Google match, that's where I'd tag LinkedIn. Or if we were looking for like Chromebooks so we can leverage various Google apps or things that sync with Google, like Quizlet or Kahoot, then I would tag those businesses that I know are on LinkedIn. And I will tell you that by tagging those businesses, then their employees see it. And if they have some like kind of crazy thing where if they make a donation, then there's a match, sometimes you can double dip that way. Like I've had software engineers from Quizlet donate to projects because I mentioned that company. We talked for a robotics project we ran last year. We had an employee from Lockheed Martin that donated, and then his company also did a match, and we had matching funds. So it was like we got like this weird double match. So I think the more that you can tag those industries, the greater luck that you're going to have. The other people I tag, and this might seem weird, but I do it primarily because our head of our Department of Ed is supposedly a charter school supporter, but like our funding structure is not great, is I tag him every time I post. And I'm sure he gets annoyed, but he sometimes will retweet those posts or like re-push that out there of, hey, here's a charter school who's trying to get funding. And then, if you're a part of like the NEA and you can't get the supplies you need, why not tag them? Sometimes they have matches out there if you're an NEA teacher. I've seen that a couple of times. I would say people in the STEM field, there tends to be more matches for them. I see less matches for special ed, although I've seen some specifically for those. There's always a sports match. I think in the last 5 years, Dick's has always had that. piece up there. Like it's always there. But sometimes it's like if you're a brand new teacher, there's a different match. Yeah, Tennessee is running the same matches right now. Google sometimes, if they're trying out new curriculum on applied digital skills or CS First, will say, hey, if you try out these 3 lessons, we'll send you a $100 gift card. That was the gift card I was sitting on. Was I taught a couple of their lessons with my students, and then I sat on that gift card waiting to see how far my project would go, and then I just fully funded it at the end of the day. So I only had to use half that gift card because the match and the gift card doubled. I do have some families who donate to my classroom like every 6 months. They'll do like 2 times a year, they'll donate to my room because their kids are involved in our program. And other people do that as well. I've also seen where like companies will fund any school's live project in that town where they have a company. So BJ's of the Manchester, New Hampshire area, if you had a project live, like funded it, like just did this random flash funding and just searched for all projects in Manchester, New Hampshire, and just paid for whatever the balance was. So a lot of times, there's times that it doesn't even appear on the match offer and it just happens. And those can be really awesome when they happen and you have a project live. So there's that piece as well.
Dee Dee's getting her account started and she says she's missing a piece of information. Do you want to unmute yourself and let Joanna help you?
I think I found it.
Okay. They do ask you, or at least they used to ask you, keep in mind I created my account 5 years ago, whether or not you're a school in a high need area. And so knowing that kind of where you fall in that socioeconomic piece can be helpful if you can label your school as high need versus moderate. Trying to think about the other tricks. The social media piece though, I will tell you, it's gotten, I don't think we've had a teacher in our building who hasn't gotten a project funded. So nobody's had to like restart a project or has gotten down to that wire where it hasn't been funded because we do a really good job at leveraging social media. Most of us don't have to go down to the wire except that crazy $5,000 3D printer project I had. Anybody else have questions or want us to talk them through some verbiage?
So I was just wondering, and I know this is silly, but there's like, I am starting the project specifically for the Pathfinders.
Yeah, sure.
Is there like, there's not anything where it's kind of like copy and paste, because we're all doing sort of like the same thing with it. So I was just wondering if there was like, I don't know, the information already out there and we just change it to our situation.
Sure it is. So
that's what I was kind of like looking for.
I would go to Find a Classroom to support.
Okay.
And then, oh, look, search topics.
Okay.
Pathfinders. Oh, I wrote fingers. It's been a day. So if I search Pathfinders, oh, look, here's somebody doing a Pathfinders virtual summer program, Summer Institute. So, but theirs might be different to the path that you're doing. So are you going to do the Furia Labs one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on. I will, projects. I did one for the Winter Institute. So you just need to change the wording.
Okay.
To reflect like your grade level and stuff.
And I know this is silly, but like, is it still like, how much is it that we're looking for?
So when you register for Pathfinders, they'll give you like, you'll get like a summary bill. And then that's,
I don't know if I've got that yet because I did get approved. So let me see if I can find my summary bill.
or at least that's how they used to do it. They might be doing it differently where we're in like this weird remote learning thing. I have to like stop sharing to find my chat. So I do apologize, but here's my project from Pathfinders from the winter. So you would just want to adjust the date range a little bit and then speak to your grade level or how you're going to use the content. But beg, borrow, and steal. Any other?
I don't know. I just can't seem to find that. I don't know.
I do know, I don't know what the summary bill is, but I do know the code is Pathfinders 2020.
Good call.
And
The code for, I'm sorry.
it automatically pulls in the project, I think. See, I haven't.
I think that's how they did it in the winter, but the time before I had to like attach a bill. So they may have simplified it.
Because I'm looking and it looks like somebody's goal is like $1,021.
Yeah, and I don't know that part of it. I don't know how they do that, but that is because I asked someone, I started looking because some people launch their projects before they went virtual. And so I asked, is this because you launched it before virtual? And she said she just put in that code and it pulled in. Yeah, that whole.
So like mine from the winter was 2,216 is what it pulled in for trip package, but I only had to fundraise like 300.
Okay, I'm just trying.
So it like with the match, it kind of like takes it down quicker.
So here's what I know, and I don't work for the Emphasis Foundation. So this is just what I've gathered from having conversations about this. I guess I can turn my video back on since I'm talking. Pathfinders uses DonorsChoose as a mechanism to basically vet out these projects because Pathfinders does support public schools and DonorsChoose also does. I think it's just an easy way for them to know that the money is going where it's supposed to. Pathfinders is, why are you taking pictures of me when I'm talking?
No. This was, so like people asked about the impact letter from PD. So like this was.
No. I just saw that picture.
All linked up and I just snapped whatever pictures and I'm like, oh, there's my 6. So I posted a picture of my code bot, of my chipping nail polish in my heart, of my Jumpstart kit wearing my awesome Pathfinders hat, of David, and I don't remember who that was, bending over. No, they were grabbing something out of their bag. Of you teaching and my water bottle. Like it. There's
anyway,
my
okay. Yeah. So back to the virtual Pathfinders is $1,015. They are covering 70% of that. You only need to raise 30% of that. So I believe, and I guess Joanna, you might be able to see like your first donation. But I believe when I saw another person's that their first donation is at 70% from the Emphasis Foundation. So you only have to come up with $300. They have a 3 times match. So it should be about $100.
So yeah, that's what I read on the Pathfinder. Like they keep emailing me because I've been before, but that's what Pathfinders sent specifically to us is like, you basically only need to raise $100 and with all the match and what Infosys is going to cover under the hood. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know where you can get PD for a week for $100 and hardware.
Yeah, no, I definitely.
I know where you can get it for $200.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to like figure this all out, and
yeah, no worries.
And I know this sounds terrible, but I'm also like trying to. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I'm trying to like figure out how to do it efficiently as possible.
That's not embarrassing, and you don't need to apologize. Like
copy and paste what I have. That's why it's in the link. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. Just like, don't describe your school as a public charter school if you're not. Like,
fix those parts.
Fix those parts. I mean, that's what we did with our friend Erin the other day, who was going through the same process.
Yeah, we are not a public charter school. I do know that.
Mark, I saw you. He got his funded yesterday.
Yay!
How much did you actually have to raise then? You're still on mute, by the way.
I didn't do anything. Yeah, it just what happened was, guys,
it's magic.
I was in the original list for the summer trip, and then I guess when it went virtual, it became like 1,000. So I still had the project up. So yesterday, when the Teacher Appreciation Day somebody from DonorsChoose actually funded the whole thing, the 400 or whatever it was.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I'm excited. So I have to go like in 5 minutes, but I wanted to tell you guys thank you. And I'm gonna do a project today
Okay.
for the code bots. What do you recommend? Just for like one bot or?
I ran mine for 2 bots yesterday because it put the total under the 600. But I mean, was your other project for the Summer Pathfinders your first project you have ever launched?
No, actually, I've had success with the VR units and a computer for this. I've had, somebody taught me how to do a DonorsChoose last year, and I think I've had like 10 projects funded so far.
So you kind of know at this point what your donor base will cover. Like at this point, I can usually launch a project for $1,000 or less and be fine. Sometimes I've gone over. If it's your first time, I say keep it under 6. But if you think that your donor base typically like you can hit that $1,000, then maybe go 4.
Okay.
Because if you launch today, like your project deadline will be late August, you're going to hit another round of matches like the second week in August when people are starting to go back to school.
Okay. And then I know for the summer, we get something mailed to us right to work for the summer program.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. All right, guys. So.
Yeah, and one last thing, if you, obviously we have the code bots on Amazon specifically for DonorsChoose, but Amazon charges all their fees and such. So if you buy them directly from us, it's cheaper. So if you have points and you want to save
It's 12 points.
12 points, yeah. And you want to save a little bit of that money on each code bot, you could think about doing that from us, but obviously you don't have to.
Mark, do you know how to check your points? Okay. So when you have your profile up here, I believe it's under private info. And then it's right up. It's right here. So like I have 9 points because I have a project I have to finish. It takes a while, but if you've launched 10 successful projects, then you have points.
Yeah, I have 17.
Then you could go direct through Amber and then not worry about the extra fee. And that might be a better way to go. So all you need is a invoice to launch a special project.
So do I send an email to Amber and then just to get an invoice?
Yeah, to me or Jerry, you can just say, I need a quote for this many bots.
Okay. And then I guess could I email you later tomorrow just to send the question?
Yep, and I will make myself a note as well to follow up with you.
Okay, guys, I got to go for a Zoom call, but thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Have a great night.
All right, Judy Ann, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. All right. So, we said we'd take an hour. We're at 3:59 right now, or whatever time zone, 59. Bye, Karen. If you need to log off, go ahead. Joanna's got a senior presenting her capstone project in a few minutes, so she's going to have to get off too, but we really appreciate you. You know how to contact me if you have any more questions. Thanks, Jake. See you soon. And Dee Dee, I did see that you are on our list as partially funded, so you've been accepted and all that.
Okay, so I'm stupid because when I got the email, it says basically it said that I needed it needed attention, and I was so frustrated because you know how everything right now is just really hard to do. Like generally, if you had a question about a student or a problem, you could just run up really quick and talk to somebody like for 20 minutes or 5 minutes or 2 minutes. But now it's like email and and especially with the IPs and everything is crazy. So I got the email and I was like, I already have my administrator letter because I was so confused that that's what they were asking me that I still needed. And so even still now, like I just created I started to create a project and I'm like, and it says go shopping. And I'm like, I don't need to go shopping, so I don't know what to do here.
So did that code work to pull in the project?
I don't know. Where do I put it? Where do I put the code?
All right, give me a second. I'm going to make a dummy project and we're going to figure it
Well,
out.
can she share her screen with you?
Yeah, I'm
Like,
happy
share
to
her
do
screen?
that. I feel very stupid.
I think I have it. No, I
So
don't.
she's going to have to go straight to professional development.
That's what I did. I'm under professional development, but it still says go shopping, trip, or visitors.
Apply a campaign code. I see it. Under
Where is
Let's
it?
Go.
Right here.
Under Let's Go?
Yep.
I don't see it. I don't see that. Let me go back and see. Let me delete this project and I'll start completely over.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So
And I'm going to double check that that's what the code was, but I think it is.
Okay. So should I go with the bit.ly? Should I start there?
If you haven't clicked that before, start there if you've never done a Donors Choose project, because then I can help support your project.
Yeah, I've never done
And then that should triple, I think.
Okay.
So
now it says get started. So I'll start there, right? Get started.
Yeah.
And then I create project.
Yeah. Click on the professional development tab.
Uh-huh.
And then don't click on Let's Go. Right below Let's Go, click Apply Campaign Code.
All right. Apply campaign. Oh gosh, I'm so silly. And
Stick it all the way at the bottom so like people don't read that far. Don't worry about it.
And is it all one word?
Yeah, let me just put it in the chat so you can copy and paste it.
All right. I'm so sorry. I feel like
No, don't be. It's fine.
I'm like really so silly. I'm like,
It's not silly.
But that's why we did this workshop, because the first time you're navigating through, like, it's a lot.
yeah. And I hate to be somebody who asks a lot of questions because it makes me feel
don't
silly
be.
because I'm like, I've already gotten some information, but did I miss all of this?
No, I have been on the email with Pathfinders for like 48 hours trying to get all of these projects
Questions answered.
Yeah, and questions answered. And the thing is, like, the PD providers are not involved in registration, in collecting money, and schedule, like when we travel and scheduling travel. We don't know any of that. But when I'm the teacher, who do people go and ask questions?
Absolutely.
Like, they go to me, and I understand why. So, and plus they've had some turnover since even Winter Pathfinders. And
oh, wow.
so I'm emailing everyone up to Kate Maloney saying, who can I ask? Because I don't know the answer to this question.
And Dee Dee, I basically took a 2-hour workshop and condensed it into an hour, because I normally would have teachers like start their first project and then be available and rotate around the room. So don't feel like you missed something. Just ask the questions of what you need.
So silly.
It's not silly. It's a lot.
Well, thanks for being patient with me.
Oh,
so
no
right
problem.
now I don't need to go shopping?
Nope, just apply.
Click trip. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then never mind read this campaign code. No, if multiple teachers are going on a trip and should submit their own project. Okay. Good. Okay. So now I gotta it's all of this is the same, right? No, it's not the same. Sorry.
Do you want to share your screen and then I can see what you see?
I found it.
Okay.
I clicked the right one.
All right. High five.
The virtual conference for July 19th, 2020.
Yeah, that's it.
Yay. Awesome.
Woohoo.
And I did the winters. I know that your face looks familiar, Joanna. I saw you at the Pathfinders Winter Institute.
Maybe.
I was with CS Awesome, so I wasn't in your
Oh my gosh, I did CS Awesome all virtually over the summer.
Yeah.
So you were with Pauline. I love Pauline.
Yeah. So I'm a master teacher for mobile CSP in this area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I've been teaching mobile CSP for 5 years and I'm an AP reader, so.
Yeah, and I went last year for the AP reading. I didn't read. I just went for mobile CSP. I think I talked to you
that might be where you're familiar from.
Yeah.
Pauline was my elbow partner at the AP reading last year.
Yeah. And
we had a grand old time.
I've been like going to be reading for like a long time, but the first year that they read, which is the first year of the exam, I was invited, but it was my oldest son's preschool graduation. And then I have a child who is in, like, he is followed right behind, like he's in 2nd grade now, and I have twins right behind him in 1st grade. And so the next year I was invited, and I couldn't go because I had twins graduating.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot, yeah.
And then last year I went, but not as a reader. I just went for the 2 days because I was like, I don't know. So anyway.
It's a good experience to do. It's more fun, I imagine, on site than it will be this year. I've done on site for the last 3 years. I'm a little bummed. We're all going to be at home communicating virtually.
Everything is on site, like is virtual. Like I'm really bummed. Like I have to say. Like,
but at least we can still see people's faces. Like my kids and I went for a drive the other day, and they were like, "Mom, look, it's another human being." I'm like, "That's pretty bad."
I know my kids. I was just telling my husband, I'm like, we have been with our kids nonstop for like 8 weeks. I feel like 100% of the time, and it's very frustrating. And I mean, there's good things and bad things. Like I definitely have gotten to figure out like definitively what kind of learners my kids are, and what like. I saw this meme the other day, and it said basically, please pray for my 8-year-old. He has to write 5 sentences.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that's my son at home. Yeah.
That is me.
He is like, I will do anything but what you want me to do. And I'm like, oh, his poor teacher.
Yesterday, I had to reset up a little space because I was trying the kitchen table and that was not working. So I put myself over here, and this wall was blank. Once I moved it around.
Did you make those yourself?
Did you paint them?
Made that.
That's so cute.
That is so cute. I love it.
And then we made the other ones. All of my kids, like some of them I traced them, and the kids painted them. But yeah.
I mean, that could be your new business for CS teachers, making custom little things like that for their classroom.
I added some color, and we also made this guy.
Oh, fun.
And then I have a couple more, like I have a YouTube and a WhatsApp. But it also is like a conversation starter. Like, so today they're new. My students saw them today, and I was like, okay, for attendance, you're going to answer with your one response. What's your favorite social media? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so then, it's good. Anyway, I think I have finally found it, and I'm on.
Awesome.
Success.
Excellent.
All right. Well, you know how to get a hold of me. So if you need more help, I can get you in contact with Joanna as well. But I know she needs to get going. And
thank you.
Nope, you're good. But we're about to have a piano lesson in this house. So.
No, thank you so much. I totally thank you.
All right. It's been awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so
Great
much.
meeting you. Edward, are you all set?
Yeah, we're going to talk tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. All right.
All right. Bye.